I suppose.
Yeah. He seems like a cool dude.
You guys are the cool ones.
Not me, man. You're as cool as the flip side of the pillow, as Stuart Scott would say.
This is so this is so funny.
What's that?
It's just, like we're sitting down to record a podcast.
Yeah.
It feels supernatural.
It does.
Because, super space natural. Like, it feels very natural to do this with you because we've been talking, hanging out, and just talking about podcast stuff for years now. Going on 3 years.
Yeah.
So it's cool to be here with you again, talking to you.
Yeah. And it's like the two worlds are now colliding.
Yeah.
So,
also, thank you, Eric, for clarifying the gap between super and natural.
I didn't want him to think. I didn't want him to think that I meant it's been very supernatural. Like every time we hang out, there's like ghouls and haunted spirits.
Well, we are recording this around Halloween time.
It's true.
I am glad you cleared it up for me though. Remember, Marine,
I have to,
ghost.
Well, usually you have to draw pictures for Marines, but
we can't do that for Brad.
Right. So I have to tell him what the picture would look like.
Or you just give him crayons to chew on, and then he can kind of be like, okay, Brad, this crayon is blue.
Yes.
So I want you to picture blue as you're eating this crayon.
You're using too many words. You got to be like fire star in sky, make heat. Heat make Brad hot. Brad need shirt off because heat from fire star.
Blue crayon tastes like ocean.
Yeah. We've learned how to talk. Like we've talked about doing an explanation to the public, an explanation to the public as far as here's how you talk to Marines.
Oh, well, maybe we should do that on this.
Break it down.
Maybe we should do that on this podcast episode with it being Veterans Day and all. By the way, we just are recording. We're just doing this.
Great.
Oh, cool.
Because
full send.
That's really the best way I feel like to do this.
You just use nouns, verbs, and adjectives. None of the fillers. Maybe not even adjectives. Maybe just nouns and verbs.
Well, adjectives.
You run fast.
Actually,
I guess some adjectives.
I do watch Schoolhouse Rock, so we unpacked our adjectives. He was a hairy bear.
I always felt bad for that Bill, though.
That sat on Capitol Hill?
Yeah, sat on Capitol Hill. I went to Capitol Hill. I took a picture of the spot that Bill sat at, and I felt like I was a part of something.
You know what the irony of Bill is just the truth. Like, they really captured the truth of American democracy.
Yeah,
Schoolhouse Rock was so great.
Schoolhouse Rock, Magic School Bus, like
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers.
Yeah. We had some significant mentors and teachers as kids.
Mr. F.I.N.E.
Mr. F.I.N.E. from Boy Meets World. He should have had his own show. He could have been a Mr. Rogers with sarcasm.
Yeah, because he was never really in anything else, was he? I don't remember seeing him. I'm sure he was in other things, but
I'm sure he was because, he was obviously older by the time Boy Meets World came around. I don't know. He would have been in his 60s because he's in his 90s now?
Oh, he's got to be. And you know something that I love about Mr. F.I.N.E.? You know who portrayed his girlfriend in the show Boy Meets World, who was another teacher?
Yeah.
They did get married.
No.
Really? They've been married for ever. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Really?
Yeah. They've been married.
Did they meet on the show or were they together during the show?
That I'm not positive on, but when I saw them being together, and I saw that they're still married to this day, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I love that. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
I'm just full of useless now.
Speaking of podcasts, did you learn that from, Pod Meets World? They have a podcast.
No, I didn't, but I know what I'm going to listen to when I leave here today.
It's pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah. But I don't like how all the shows are doing, all the old Disney shows from the early 2000s, late 90s are doing, there's the Wizards of Waverly Place one and the Boy Meets World and the
But I get Always Sunny has one. Workaholics, they have
do
one.
they?
Yeah, they have The
Office.
I don't know if
maybe
it's
you
so
guys
much
said that already.
Well, I don't know if it's so much analytical as far as each episode. I haven't listened to them. But I mean, I understand why they would want to do that.
Okay, well now I feel bad because I like Workaholics and I would listen to that. So,
I do. I like
Go Disney Podcasts.
Brad's over here listening to the Wizards of Waverly Place podcast.
No, I'm not, sir.
Sorry, you listened to it and you were like, wait a minute.
I'm listening.
I don't know if I like this.
I listen to the Bluey podcast.
I would listen to the Bluey podcast.
Bluey's not Disney, is it?
No, but they're on Disney. They're on the Disney app, but it's not a Disney thing.
I think it is a Disney.
I mean, they had to have had some agreement with Disney if they're on the Disney app. I don't know.
Yeah, anyway.
We're getting all over the place. So the reason why, I should introduce both Eric Peterson and Brad Stosiek. So if you're listening to this and not watching it, this is what Eric sounds like.
Hi. Hello, fellow humans.
This is actually Eric's return. This is such a full circle moment because Eric was on the very first episode of Kankakee Podcast. And now you're back. And this is, like episode probably 176 or something like that.
That's so crazy. And I remember when I was helping you put the studio in your basement.
Yes.
And moving the desks around.
I talk about that story all the time.
And so to be able, and that's part of the cool thing, period, about community in general, but just knowing you and seeing where you were starting out, seeing what you're doing now with Pathfinder, like it's really cool, man. And to be able to sit here in this other studio, you know what I mean? Like,
thanks, man.
It's been a trip.
Yeah, it really has. It's been absolutely wild. And, thank you again for helping out because some of those pieces that we moved downstairs were just a pain in the butt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. The one was like it was like a corner desk piece, and it reminded me, the shape was like a mini baby grand piano, I feel like, and we were trying to fit that and bring it. It was just
we made it work.
Fun. We made it work, but and then Brad Stosiek.
Hey guys,
welcome.
Thank you.
Now Brad and Eric combined make the I'm F.I.N.E podcast.
Yes,
which is actually the first, when I started my business outside of Kankakee Podcast, I'm F.I.N.E was like the first podcast that I started producing outside of my own, was you guys. So it was really cool to finally make that happen, because Eric had been talking about it forever, and Brad separately had been talking about starting a podcast on his own, and then the two of you met, and then I guess, rainbows and butterflies, just
like the Wonder
happened.
Twins.
Yeah.
Yes. If one was Asian and the other was blind. Just like the Wonder Twins.
I'm having a hard time trying to figure out where to start. Eric, a lot of people know about you, what you do. Except now, like, coming full circle, if people haven't followed you since that first episode of Kankakee Podcast, a lot has changed for you.
Yes.
You're no longer at CertaPro Painters, and you are actually work for the Kankakee County VAC. You're the superintendent.
Yes.
There now.
Which is wild to me.
Which is really crazy. So that's a whirlwind moment.
Yes.
And then, of course, Project Headspace and Timing is going strong.
Yes.
And has actually grown exponentially since, 3.5 years ago.
All of it is just a whirlwind to me. But yes, it definitely has, which has been, I don't know. Like, I like to think that I'm fairly decent when it comes to speaking and expressing my feelings.
You're amazing at it.
When it comes to trying to explain how it feels to watch the growth of an organization that you started, dude, I don't know how to describe it other than when people thank me, hug me, or a family member of a veteran that we worked with hugs me and is like crying. You know what I mean? Like, that profound gratitude and humility that I feel in those moments. It's so amazing to be able to get to experience little moments like that. And it refills the cup because the work itself is exhausting. But again,
I don't know how you do all the things that you do.
I don't know either. Sometimes I drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah, I'm same. People have been asking me lately, so how much coffee do you drink in a day? And I'm at the point where I can't answer the question.
Why do you ask?
Because
don't worry about it.
Because I don't keep track. That's how much coffee I'm drinking now.
Yeah.
I just don't keep track. That's how much. I've literally just lost track at this point of how much coffee I drink.
It's a grind, and because you did the same thing when you were starting your own thing.
I'm still doing the grind,
right? But it's not 9 to 5.
No, that's
24/7.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And there's always something that needs to be done. There's always more that could be done. There's always something that could be made better. Yeah. So it's hard to be able to turn that off. So man, I mean, I drink a lot of coffee. I have a really good support system with my friends and family. And then I have a really messed up sense of humor. So even when things aren't going right, I'm just like, well, that's right.
And if people listen to I'm Fine, they get such a heavy dose of the humor that both of you guys put out, which we'll get to the nitty gritty of I'm Fine here in a moment, of course. But in a nutshell, that's what Eric's been up to for the last 3.5 years. And then Brad.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my gosh. We, first and foremost, all of us here are Mantino people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't currently live there, but I was born and raised there. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm a Mantinoan for life.
Yep.
Just because my family still lives there. My roots are there, and then both of you guys currently reside there.
Yep.
Brad and I sort of grew up together.
Yeah.
You're a couple years younger than me. Your sister, Brittany, was in my class at Mantino. So her and I it seemed like every year we were always in at least a few classes together, except high school. I went to a different high school, but still so we're familiar with one another. And you have such a unique story. And honestly, your story could be a completely separate episode just because I think it's so fascinating.
Wow.
But
well, thank you.
In a nutshell, you joined the Marines right out of high school.
Right out of high school.
Yeah.
My parents had to sign a waiver because I was 17 when I enlisted.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. My dad and my mom, they were both against it. They're like, I don't want to do this. We're signing your life away. And I was like, I'm doing it anyway. So you either do it now.
Yeah, because you would have just waited until you were 18.
And had that happened, it was like the delayed entry program because it was a time of still sending, deploying and stuff. So it was so many people waiting to enlist that after you enlisted, you'd have to wait a year.
And when was that? That was the 20-teens or 2010s, right?
I enlisted in March of 2011, left December 2011.
So at that time, gosh, what was going on? There was Afghanistan.
Yep,
that was still happening.
Oh yeah,
Iraq was still.
Those were still both ongoing.
A lot of stuff in Syria. I feel like was going Libya,
Gaddafi. I don't remember when all that Gaddafi stuff was.
No, I don't either. But
when Obama said, when he was the one that was trying to get all the troops out of Iraq.
Yeah,
it was 2012.
Yeah, 2012.
Yeah. It was towards
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like that was something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you joined the Marines, and then you pretty much, if I'm correct, you pretty much spent all your time in Japan.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yep. I did a couple months in Virginia for the schoolhouse. I did boot camp and my training, and then 4.5 years on the beautiful island of Okinawa, Japan. And I don't mean that sarcastically.
I know.
It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. And
it's gorgeous
too.
Oh, dude.
Actually, one of our, we have a listener who grew up in Kankakee. And he's a veteran, I believe Navy, if I'm not mistaken. I hope he's listening to this, by the way.
Yeah.
And he lives in Japan.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. After he retired from the military, he stayed there, I guess, or went there, you know.
You see that with a lot of like expats. Like I know guys in the military that moved to Germany, they moved to the Philippines, they moved to Japan, because if you're stationed there, especially during those pivotal moments of your life when you're just figuring out, you're young, you're figuring out who you are.
Yep.
I mean, if you love the culture, you love the food, you know what I mean? And if you don't ultimately agree with some of the things that are happening on your home front, I understand why those people would want to move to those countries again, you know?
And I have so much like roots there in a way. Like Gavin was born there, and a lot of
Gavin was born there.
Yeah.
That's cool.
He was born there on Christmas Day, dude.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's a Christmas baby.
He is a Christmas baby.
Oh, just like my wife.
Yeah.
I didn't realize Gavin was a Christmas baby.
Awesome. Yeah. But and it just, you learn you're embracing a whole new culture, and it's so cool. And because you just learn so much, and it's so different, and just, it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
And your experience is quite, I feel like it's important for people to know that you're a Marine and you were a cook.
I was a cook.
And for a long time, I know, and people can go and listen to the I'm F.I.N.E podcast, and you talk about being a cook and the, what's the word I'm looking for? The stigma, I guess, that's attached to that.
Yes.
And honestly, it could be really any role in the military that's not infantry, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a stigma.
Or somebody that didn't deploy, like National Guard reserves, you have guys that served honorably and then just never deployed. And because of that, they feel like they don't get to say that they're a veteran, which in my opinion is ridiculous, regardless of your job, what you did, whatever. But yeah.
So for a long time, I basically called myself a glorified lunch lady. But now as I'm older, looking back, I'm very thankful I never deployed. You know, I could have lost my life or limbs or anything. And also I left the military with a skill that benefits both me and my family. So I cook. I know how to, you know what I mean? I know flavor profiles. So I am very thankful for that.
Yeah.
But when I was 18, I was like, oh, I'm gung-ho. I'm going to go blow stuff up and kick doors down and play Call of Duty in real life. Like, you know? And I just, I'm glad I didn't do that stuff.
Yeah.
And the where your story gets really interesting is actually after the military.
Yes, sir.
You are, as we've mentioned, you're blind.
Yeah.
You've been blind this whole time?
Surprise!
I watched him play bags. I don't think he is blind,
Eric.
But we'll go ahead. Yeah.
You gotta stop telling people that. Okay. Second of all, bags is muscle memory. Okay, I play a lot of bags. Don't worry about it. Anyway, Jake, you were saying?
Yeah.
That comes after the military, right?
Yes.
How did that happen? How did you lose your eyesight?
Actually, it started in the military.
It did start in the military.
Not the vision loss, but the complications that came because of the disorder that essentially took my vision. So basically, I was getting just these like horrible headaches. Like I'm talking like couldn't get out of bed headaches. And then I got these really stiff necks where I could not move my head. And then it got to the point where it was like a month. I couldn't. So I went to the doctor. They're like, you've got muscle spasms and you need to go to physical therapy. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So they do all that, go to physical therapy. It's getting worse at this point. So long story short, go back to the doctor. They order an MRI. The MRI shows that I have a condition called Chiari malformation. So what that is basically my brainstem is growing out of my spinal cord. And my body just naturally adapted to it. And it got to a point where it wasn't adapting to it anymore.
And this, was this something you were born with? And they just did, like the repercussions just didn't really come until you were in your early 20s?
Yeah, I think like 23-ish. Yeah, so a lot of people actually have Chiari malformation and they have zero, and like it just like corrects itself. But I guess, my body just adapted so well. Like the first doctor I saw told me I should have been paralyzed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So all that happened. I had the first surgery, and basically, long story short, the surgery I had was the spinal cord was shaved down, which, by the way, if I wasn't short enough already, took off another like 2 inches.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Really?
Yeah.
Like an inch and a half, dude. I'm like,
really?
I'm like 5'4" now. It's so
I didn't
sad.
know that surgery also made you like literally made you shorter.
You would think so because they're going at your spine.
Yeah. And now I wear shoes that have like 0 support. So it's like flat. So now people really know my real height. Yeah. So anyway, so basically where the doctor had put a patch where he had shaved down, it was leaking spinal fluid and my brain cavity, it filled up with spinal fluid and the pressure, it increased the pressure in my head and it crushed my optic nerves. And by the time that it was figured out, it had already been like that for 3-4 months before it was. And by the time it was fixed and corrected, the damage had been done.
So they went in, they're like, hey, we're going to try to fix this. And it was too late.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so the initial surgery was to just fix it. It wasn't too late at that point.
Okay.
To fix it, it was fine. But when I went to go get it, re-looked at and stuff, at that point, it was too late.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And just in the, like I said, we've known each other for a long time because we grew up together, but we didn't really get to know each other until like the past few years and doing I'm F.I.N.E podcast and things like that. And as people can imagine that are listening to this, this was no walk in the park, or if it was a walk in the park, it was Jurassic Park, right? For you having to...
I like that.
I do too. And not only was it Jurassic Park, but it was a dark Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it was like Jurassic Park 2.
At night.
Or maybe 3 with William H. Macy.
Yeah.
With the pterodactyls.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So, this had a tremendous effect on your life, your mental health, your family, just everything.
Yeah.
But just in the amount of time that we've gotten to know each other since the beginning of the I'm F.I.N.E podcast to now, it's just amazing to see the progression that you've made.
Thank you.
It's incredible.
Thank you.
It just seems like you've really, it's inspiring. It really is.
I really appreciate that.
To be able to just make the best of what you have and realize that, hey, this doesn't mean I can't do things.
Yeah.
Like I'm still going to go out and do, like you just talked about playing bags.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and I know like you go out and you shoot, you do archery
and axe throwing and hiking and all of it. But so here's the thing. Here's why I do that. When this happened to me, it took me a long time to get to this point, but when it happened to me, I saw that I had 2 options. Option 1, I can let this dictate my life. I can never leave the house. My wife and kids can grow to hate me. I could be miserable because I'm angry because I lost my vision and woe is me. And potentially my wife leave me, my kids grow up and hate me, and who knows where that route could have ended. Drunk, drugs, dead probably, Or my other option was realize what happened to me, accept what happened. When I have feelings about it, feel the feelings that I have about it, but don't become those feelings. Mm-hmm. And
that's
still,
the hard part.
Yeah.
Absolutely, way easier said than done. But that's where you practice the mindfulness and meditation and all that stuff. And it's not just me. I've got a 10-year-old son, a 7-year-old daughter, and a wife that depend on me and they love me very much. I've got the Fat Fam and this podcast. There's way too much in my life that I look forward to and that I'm grateful for to be miserable. I don't know. It feels good.
But you've also always kind of had that attitude. Like when I first met you, you were in a bit of a rough spot.
Yeah.
But like since then, there's been so many times where like on our podcast or just making conversation, we're talking about things that hold us back, and I'll get to you and I'll be like, yeah, man, what about you? And you'll just sit there and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, I don't really like, dude, you don't like the fact that you are blind. You don't let that take up any like real estate in your mind, in my opinion, when you're talking about how you're dealing with adversity and hardship and stuff like that. You're like, you don't sit on it. Like, I think some people with certain labels, regardless of if it's like PTSD or whatever it may be, like kind of almost hide under that label because it's easy to do and it's easy to get mad and frustrated and think about all the things that could have been. But like you said, you're a testament to that because you don't let it dictate your life, which I think is very important.
Yeah.
And it's something that you have to, I assume, practice continuously and consistently, I just remember as a kid after my grandma had gotten cancer and passed away, I was like, man, I'm gonna change the world. I'm gonna do something on such a grand scale that that everyone's gonna know about it. And I feel like I'm changing things on a grand scale, but it's not to be showy. I'm doing it without knowing I'm doing it, because I've had so many people come up to me in the gym. Hey, I started working out because I saw you working out. And if you can do it, I mean, geez. And people are like, you get around so great. And then, my doctors and my sister's friends, I go on walks and talk to people and they're like, oh, how far do you walk? A mile or two a day? I'm like, yeah, like 10, minimum of 10. I don't know. I'm not going to like I said, I'm not going to let this control my life. It's not who I am. It's a part of who I am, but it doesn't make me Brad. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love that.
Yeah. And the work that both of you are doing with the I'm F.I.N.E podcast, which if you're wondering what that stands for, maybe I should let you guys tell us.
It stands for freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. And I shamelessly stole that from the Italian Job. The movie, The Italian Job.
I forgot about that.
Remember?
Movie.
Yeah, and it's the remake because there's an older one, but in the one with my favorite Marky Mark, and he's talking to.
There's is that the remake or there's a remake?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm fairly certain the one with Marky Mark's actually.
So the one that came out when we were kids is a remake. Okay. So I didn't realize that. I thought it was that was.
I'm pretty.
I mean, I wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, but there's that scene where Marky Mark is talking to Donald Sutherland.
Okay,
and they're talking about this high stress situation, and Donald asks Marky Mark like how he's doing, and he's like, "I'm fine," and Donald's like, "You know what that stands for, right? Freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional." And every time I've ever heard somebody say like, "I'm fine," like I always hear that in my head. Like, really, that's what you're saying.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So, seemed like a fitting name.
Yes. Yeah. Anytime I say I'm fine, it's probably
or as any married man could attest to, if you ask your wife how she's doing and she says, "I'm fine," you're like, oh,
run.
Yeah. Not fine. I need to go somewhere.
So you're fine, but the exact opposite. You know what's the worst? Being blind and you can't go anywhere. Like, hey, I'm gonna go sit in the car.
I'm just gonna go sit and stare this general direction. Yeah. But no, so I found that to be very fitting as a name for our podcast, because I wanted to talk about mental health. Like, I'm really tired. The whole reason why, as you know, and hopefully some of the listeners know, the whole reason why I started FAT in the first place was because I was losing my friends to suicide, and I was just getting real tired of it. And to have a platform where we can just talk about different aspects of mental health in an unprofessional and unintimidating, I think maybe that's the right word.
Yeah, I would say
way.
And it's the approach is like you're at a party with a few of your best friends, and you're just you're talking about these topics.
We're just trying to figure it out, understand how it affects us, understand how it's related to so many of the issues that we deal with, and how we can find our way out of it. And that was something when Brad and I first met and talked, that he really wanted a platform to like share what you think, what you feel, what your experience has been, right?
Well, my initial goal wasn't so much, it was mental health, but more focused on vision loss. So my initial goal was to bridge the gap between vision loss and like people who are sighted. I wanted to show people that like, I'm not just a disability. Like, look what I can still do.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like a sighted person. And I kind of wanted to like make it funny, let people know I can still joke around. It's okay to laugh about it. And then, we just mushed that together, and thus I'm F.I.N.E podcast.
And, just to be clear, like, yes, there's a lot of veteran language or topics, but it is, anyone can benefit from the podcast as well. But I do really think, veterans should tune into the podcast if they're struggling with some mental health issues. Even if they're not, they'll find it very entertaining and informative. That's why I really love the show, is you guys deliver the facts in a very entertaining way.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
And it's because it's like, I wanted to build a podcast that was aimed at what I call the veteran community. And the veteran community are not just veterans. It's anybody that has a veteran in their lives, whether it's a family member, friend, whatever. But on the other side of that coin, it's like a lot of things. When you look at veterans, in my opinion, you have arguably the most diverse group of people under one label. All walks of life, faiths, everything. They all put on the same uniform, shave their heads, same mission, like they're all together, right? So you get an interesting look at a lot of different issues when you look at the veteran community. And I think that the civilian community can benefit from learning from a lot of the things that veterans face. And veterans need to be a part of their communities back home, but sometimes they don't know how to do that. And communities are more than accepting, in my opinion, especially in Kankakee County. Oh my God.
Yes. We have a huge veteran population too.
Yeah.
So,
but sometimes the community doesn't always know how to show it. Yes. So we also, as another thing with the podcast is we wanted this to be just another tool that bridges that gap. So when you hear what another veteran's facing, you being a person that's just gone through trauma in your life. Well, okay, I don't understand exactly what it's like to walk in your shoes, but I've been through a similar situation. Like I understand a little bit. And hopefully, best case scenario, it prompts a conversation between the two groups. So I have a better understanding of you and you have a better understanding of me. And I think that's also an overall goal with our podcast and just what we do as an organization in general,
Yeah,
I like that we have all walks of life on the podcast too. So we have all branches that are represented. So we have the intelligent Air Force. Sometimes we got
no Space Force though.
No, not yet.
Oh, but we got to get Space Force.
We do.
Anyone in Kankakee County a Space Force?
Actually, shout out to my friend Danny Truelove. We graduated Herscher High School together, and he. Still in the Navy.
Is he the one that I saw in the paper
doing the NASA stuff?
Yeah, he. There was like one of the spacecrafts that came down, and he was part of the team that had to go and get the spacecraft from Danny. The ocean. Oh, okay,
great dude. And so we might have some folks from Kankakee County in the Space Force now. But yes, as you were saying.
So we have smart people. We've got Army, and then there's. Brad like Crane.
Yeah, Brad just chest beating, itching, just
So okay, let's explain that for those that don't understand the poking at the Marines of what you're doing.
So I'll do my best to explain it. So in all honesty, now whenever you get a bunch of veterans together that have served in different branches. In my opinion, it's very much like a familial type of thing where it's like you and your brothers and sisters or your cousins or whoever can make jokes about that one uncle, one aunt, whoever in your family. But if somebody from outside your family tried to make fun of that family member, you'd be like, I need to talk to you in the other room. You know what I mean? So it's like when you have a bunch of vets from different branches, especially based on a lot of our senses of humor and everything like that, it's fairly natural for everybody to just start kind of ribbing on each other, making fun of each other, blah, blah, blah. And so people, the thing that people make fun of the Air Force for is for the fact that they're really so well funded. Like they're very well funded. So their housing is better, their food is better.
They got the tech, right?
Yeah. We invite the Air Force to our festival, Heroes, Hogs, and Hot Rods, right? We put it out to all the branches, okay? The Air Force shows up with 2 semi-truck trailers with like all of this animatronic Elon Musk like type things. Like it's a flight simulator.
The Marines brought a pull-up bar and an ammo can.
A pull-up bar that they like built 10 minutes ago.
Oh yeah.
On a rebar.
Like put together with tape.
Took off a fence.
Oh yeah.
Or something. They're like, here you go, do pull-ups. And it's just, so people make fun of the Air Force for that, right? Like the nicer type type digs everywhere you go.
But why are Marines dumbed down?
I think I honestly, like, the reason why people poke fun of the Marines. So the Marines were started in a bar.
Yeah.
That's where they came to be. And they were known as the aggressive grunts. Like, if you needed something to get done, you sent the Marines in there and they just like laid waste. That's what the Marines did. And so because they had that grunt mentality, with that grunt mentality comes also poking fun at like, lack of forward thinking or whatever the case may be.
Intelligence.
Yeah. They're
so
like,
it's just messing around, but that's where I think it comes from.
Yeah, I think so. Like, here's a gun. You go shoot. Okay.
Yeah.
Big boom.
Yeah. Just send the Marines in. Just, you know what I mean? But again, the one thing that I love about it too, it's like we can all sit there and poke fun and make fun of each other. But like when it comes time, like if there was any sort of external threat that was making fun of one of our people. If a bunch of veterans are together in a bar making fun of an Air Force person for being in the Air Force, and then somebody else from outside of that group comes into that atmosphere and starts threatening that Air Force person, in my opinion, you're going to see every other service member run to that Air Force person's back, like have that person's back too. You know what I mean? So it's all playful, I think.
As long as you point me in the right direction, I'll run to that person's back too.
Yeah.
I run the opposite way.
Him in that general area.
Yeah. I'm still there.
Be careful because he'll just keep going.
I'll always be there.
Walking.
I'm like Forrest.
For days.
I just kept walking and walking.
Yeah.
I slept when I was tired.
But so that's why. And I don't know. I mean, I think and individual experiences may vary, and that's another big thing. Like Brad was saying earlier about his job being a cook and how that made him feel for years. I felt similar because I didn't feel like I saw as much combat as I should have seen. So I also didn't feel like I deserved to be in that category, because I think when a lot of people think about the veteran community, or veterans in general, they think about like those special operations guys. And those guys are amazing. And then they deserve every bit of recognition that they get. But that wasn't my experience. That wasn't Brad's experience. But our experiences are also valid because we did our job. We signed up. We did whatever we were asked to do. And since we've been doing this, it's been amazing to see how many other veterans that are out there that felt similar. Yeah. They didn't feel like they wouldn't proudly say that they were a veteran because they didn't see combat or deploy or whatever. It's like, no, you did your job. Like you did your job. You did what the government asked you to do. Yep. So,
I'm curious to know and both of you can answer this too, what you've learned about the veteran population in Kankakee County since starting the I'm F.I.N.E podcast through Project Headspace and Timing. I mean, I'm sure you've learned some new things via the podcast that you didn't know before.
Yeah, I didn't know there were so many veterans in this area. I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot. And I didn't realize either, because a big thing for me when I got out was I felt very alone because, you have all your brothers and sisters close to you guys, just go to the next barracks room, hang out, and then you get out and it's just like, okay, everybody's in different states. Now what? But now that I know that there's the veteran presence, I don't feel as alone, I think.
Yeah. I would agree. I love the beauty of the diversity of the veteran community. Yeah. And I learned that not only are there so many veterans in our community who shared similar opinions, but there are a lot of people that are not veterans in our community that have a veteran in their life that they wanted to learn more about, or like try to understand how to talk to about certain things. And all of that was incredibly impactful and really helps out a lot, because again, the veteran community, and I've said this before, but in my opinion, a lot of veterans, the love that you can get from one is different because they were willing to die for you before they knew who you were. And so when they know who you are and they care about you and they love you, like they would do anything for you. They have a passion to serve. Many veterans that I know have a passion to serve, and they have a passion to serve selflessly. So to the brothers and sisters on their left and right, they would give everything for them. They would give everything for you because they care about you. And so to see all that, and those are the pros. But a lot of us, we all have quirks. It's not just veterans. That's people, period,
just people,
right?
Oh, absolutely.
But because we come from that military mindset where we were forced to live with a bunch of people, very different from us, but with the same mission, we know how to work through those quirks. We know how to accept people for who they are and not make you feel bad because you act a little different in this way or that way. So, I mean, to be able to see that and expand upon that since starting the podcast and everything with F.I.N.E, it's just been beautiful. And then to watch those relationships blossom to where now other veterans and their families are hanging out with other veterans and their families. And they could have met, if it wasn't for F.I.N.E, it wasn't for our podcast, sure. But the fact that they give any credit to us for being able to assist with that, that is strengthening the overall community, which is just a beautiful thing to see, I think.
So basically, veterans are a pack of golden retrievers.
More or less.
We all just love each other. We're loyal and we're goofy.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's kind of what it looks like from the outside.
Super hairy.
You guys get community more than the general population, I would say, but that goes with the experience, right? That's a big part of what military is teamwork. Everyone has the same mission, and it's not always that way in the workplace. A lot of times it's like, I'm looking out for me.
Right. Yeah. And it's very hard to deal with that. And it's like, again, and it's not to say that anyone is any more important than anyone else. It's to say that we all have a piece. Like everybody's got a part. And sometimes we'll meet people and they'll be like, well, and they'll say, oh, I never served, but blah, 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 blah. And they say it in such like I don't know how else to say it, like a discouraging way or something about themselves, like a negative way. And my thing is always like, if you didn't serve, you're the reason why somebody did. You're the reason why somebody was proud to do that because of the love that they have for you. Like, I'm glad that I got to serve for my family and friends that didn't, because that's something that makes me proud of my time in service. Like and then coming back here, we have to know that we all still have to work together and we're all on the same page with that. And I think communities understand what it's like to be a community, because we're here in this room. We were there for September 12th, 2001. We know what it feels like when Hurricane Harvey hit down in Texas. And they're sending semi-trucks from Bradley full of stuff down to a bunch of people we don't know just to take care of them because we heard their houses got destroyed. Like, we know what it's like to be a community when things go bad. But I think the veteran community really knows what it's like to be a community, period, like across the board. And so that's something that I really hope we can instill. And I hope that that's a gift we can give our community to make sure we all understand what it really means to be a community all the time,
Very well said. I think you guys do a fantastic job
Thank you.
at that. More than any other organization I've seen.
That means a lot.
Really good at instilling that. What I'm curious to know is what are some of the biggest challenges that veterans you see are currently facing in Kankakee County? I mean, either of you can answer this, or both of you can answer it.
Brad? Go first.
Well, just for what I noticed, I think alcohol is a big one. And I think alcohol and homelessness are two pretty big ones in Kankakee.
Well, on the ride here, I took 2 different phone calls. Yeah. Both of them were for a homeless veteran. On the ride here. So definitely. I mean, I think overall, what I think the issue is for a lot of veterans is purpose. Fundamentally, that's what I think the issue is purpose. Because when you were in, you had purpose. Your purpose was whatever the mission is, whatever your superior says is the purpose, that's the purpose. And you're going to do it. And you're going to fight, kill, and die if you have to, for those to your left and your right, to achieve that purpose. And then you come home, and then you don't really know what your purpose is. So like, if you were lucky enough to be married while you were in the service and your wife or your husband was taking care of all of those things for you at home while you were deployed or stationed somewhere, whatever, you come home and it's like, okay, well, what's my purpose? My spouse is taking care of all of these things. So that's not my purpose. I mean, I don't feel like I have a place in my community. So I don't know what my purpose is. And veteran or not, when you don't know what your purpose is, that can be a very scary thing, And then that can lead you down some really unsavory roads when it comes to alcohol, drugs, or just other destructive types of behaviors. So I think fundamentally the issue is purpose, because there are so many amazing organizations to be a part of, veteran or not. There's so many incredible things that are happening that you can be a part of if you genuinely believe in it. And so I think that's why that's another part of our goal as an organization, is to make veterans feel like they're more part of their community again. Because at the end of the day, and this might be the wrong thing to say, I don't care if you volunteer for FAT or not. I just want you to volunteer with somebody that you're passionate about, that you love, because that's what accomplishes our overall mission of making sure that we have a better community here. So I think purpose, and I understand that that's a philosophical, like kind of profound type answer, but I genuinely think, that's a big problem.
That's huge. Yeah. I battled with that for a long time.
Yeah.
I know you can't speak obviously for every veteran, but I always see this get brought up a lot and since this episode is dropping on Veterans Day, do you like being told thank you for your service on Veterans Day or any day? Like, what is that something people should say or not say to a vet? I've heard mixed reviews on that, saying thank you for your service. I mean, I don't know what does that look like this day and age? And like I said, I know you can't speak for the entire veteran community, but right. I guess from your personal perspective or veterans that that have talked about this.
That's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great. Okay, so for me, I get awkward about it. People say thank you for your service, and I'm like, oh, thanks. Like I don't know what to say, so I don't really like. I appreciate that you say it. Like you don't really have to, like I feel like I don't need a thanks. I was just doing my job. Like, but I do appreciate it. What I don't like is when people like specifically go out of their way on Memorial Day and wish me happy Memorial Day. Thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. And I'm like, no, this is not for me. Go spend some time at a cemetery, at a military cemetery, and thank those people. That's the only time it bothers me is on Memorial Day.
Right. As it should, because that's for the fallen, not for, people who served and are living. So.
Yeah, I get that. And I agree to a degree in that. For me, it's like, okay, well, what is that person that's thanking me? What is their intention? Their intention is that they know that I'm a veteran and they are so appreciative of that they want to go out of their way and say thank you to me. And that means a lot. That's very meaningful. Do I need it? No, I definitely don't. I did my job, just like Brad said. I'm thankful for what I did. All that stuff. I'm very content with that. I don't need that thank you, but when I hear it, whenever somebody says thank you for your service to me, I just say thank you for your support. Again, it's like one hand washes the other. Like I appreciate that, thank you, but it's not needed. I think where it's mostly needed when it comes to thanking a veteran is with the Vietnam veteran population, in my opinion. Thankfully, when I got back from Afghanistan in 2009, I came back with Charlie Company, 1178 here in Kankakee. The entire county came out to welcome us home. I felt very welcomed. Like it was a beautiful sight. All of that was so incredible. And it was such a wonderful welcome back home. You know what I mean? A lot of Vietnam veterans, pretty much all Vietnam veterans did not get that. And unfortunately, many that I know and have spoken to were subjected to just terrible things when they were overseas, things that nobody should have to go through. And they came home and they weren't, they were spat on, and people just looked down on them for everything that they went through and everything that they did. And so I do think, I don't think you need to say thank you to me for what it's worth. But if you see someone wearing a Vietnam veteran hat, in my opinion, you should say thank you to them and you should say welcome home to them because they didn't get that. You know what I mean? But I'm never offended when somebody tries to do something nice because I know you're just being nice. It's never an offensive thing. But I do know a lot of veterans that I've talked to feel the same way in that we don't know how to respond because in our mind, we did our job. Yes. But still, any act of gratitude is always appreciated, I think.
Yeah. I was just going to say my next thought would be, are there things that people can do instead or say instead, you know, something that's not so maybe an awkward exchange, you know?
I mean, this isn't an easy answer, but what I think is that if you are working to make your community if you are doing your part to make your community the type of community that a veteran is proud to serve, then that's all you got. You don't need to tell me thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I see all these people out there that are doing their own thing, that have carved out their own piece of the pie, that are working on building beds for kids with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, that are working on taking care of school lunch debt with Let's Catch Up, that are working on any of these other things, so many amazing organizations, that is a huge thank you for your service to me, because you're making my community better, and that makes me proud to live here. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. What about you, Brad? Anything to add to that?
No, that was very well said, Eric. I don't know. Sometimes, I really feel like just the beautiful face and the hype man.
He is. Both of those things. And so much more. But
his hair. I mean,
I know.
Brad's hair, he's got very flowy.
Thank you.
You condition that, I can tell.
Oh, always.
Do you?
Yeah.
Every day?
Oh my gosh.
Are you supposed to condition every day?
I don't know,
if
but
you're supposed to condition every day.
It's very soft. Yeah, it is very soft. He probably does. He conditions every day. That checks out.
Don't be jealous, guys.
Well, you know, getting back more into the I'm F.I.N.E podcast, it has been such a pleasure to be able to be the man behind the scenes on that podcast. It's actually something I look forward to editing every other week.
It means a lot, man.
Just because
I'm glad.
It's such there's times where I'm rolling on the floor laughing, you know, and to put this out there, for those of you that want to check this out, just so you know, probably not safe for work in some capacity. Yeah. Just so you know, adult language is used on the show.
Yes.
But let me, all that aside though, I would, just say, don't let that stop you from checking out the podcast, just because there's so much value in it. I feel like, what have been some of your favorite moments in the last 2.5 years on the I'm F.I.N.E podcast?
Oh, I have several, but I'm going to let
There's so many. Sure. I like all the outtakes. I like all of the outtakes. I like all the funny conversations that I get caught in that I don't realize.
That's why the second we sit down, I start recording now.
I don't even realize it. And I just say whatever. Sometimes I'll be singing, or I don't know. I'm just like, dude, whatever. I love it though.
Well, it's because we're genuinely enjoying ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think, and hopefully not only does that come through in the podcast itself once it's polished by you and finished up, but like when you listen to the outtakes of us just riffing on whatever, like we're happy to be there,
dude.
You know what I mean?
I wish it was an everyday job.
I know.
I love it so much.
We have fun.
Yeah. I do. There's so many great moments. I love all of it. I love all the topics we cover, all of our guests, all of it.
Yeah. So, just to get out there too, I don't know if we made this clear enough. It is a mental health podcast. It's just not about veterans' mental health, but you guys cover some very interesting topics.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got episodes that are literally about what, LSD or just psychedelics all the way to like depression and, therapy dogs.
Yep. We talked about toxic masculinity with a gay man who also works as a social worker.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We had a really cool perspective on what that was.
Yep.
That was a great episode.
We talked to a food psychologist around Thanksgiving, Emily Lavoie.
Emily Lavoie.
Yes. Awesome.
She's fantastic.
We produce her podcast too.
Yeah.
So, I think so. I have a few that really stick out. So part of the reason why I started Project Headspace and Timing was because I read a book called Tribe by Sebastian Junger. And in that book...
He needs to start giving you some royalties because you drop his name so often.
He is such an...
and he's been on the show too.
Yeah.
That's probably what you were going to say.
Yeah. Well, so... When my buddy John Kemper, when he killed himself, I was his medic in Baghdad. I was really messed up about it. And then a friend of mine said, read this book. It's called Tribe. It's about the issues that veterans have coming home. And I was like, okay. And I read it, loved it, recommend it to everybody. And then fast forward a couple of years down the road, I just, with a lot of help, was able to get this veteran who was addicted to methamphetamines, into an inpatient rehab program down in Texas. And it took me years working with this vet and his family and it was a really tough situation. And after we were able to get him in there, and the veteran sent me a picture of himself at Warrior's Heart checking in. And I was overwhelmed with this feeling of just peace and love and gratitude and everything. And in that moment, I reached out to Sebastian Younger on one of his social media platforms and just said, hey, man, I just want to let you know what your work means to me. And I just talked to him about how much it meant to me, what I'd been through, what we've done as an organization. And I was just like, I want you to know that like I wouldn't have been able to do any of this if it wasn't for you and your book. So I just really hope that people tell you how important you are. And he responded back to me. And then we started talking back and forth. He started asking me to like, hey man, feel free to check in every once in a while. He's like a New York Times best-selling author. Like, what do you want me to tell you, dude? Like, okay. And so I asked him to be on on our podcast. Yeah. And he did it. And when he said yes, I was blown away by that. And then I was blown away by how cool he was.
Oh, he's so cool.
Super chill.
Awesome guy.
So that was an amazing moment.
Yep. Yeah. One of the things I think of from that episode that he was on, he was saying the two important things that everyone should do is donate blood and vote, I think. Yeah, I don't know, for some reason that always sticks out in my mind because I'm just like, who says stuff like that? Go out and vote and donate blood.
He'd done a documentary called Restrepo, which is this war documentary about a National Guard platoon in Afghanistan. And that was like such a heavy, and he was there. Like his body of work's very impressive, the things that he's done for the veteran community. So to be able to like have people like that I can just like kind of reach out to now is amazing. And then the other two, one was when we had Santa on our podcast.
Santa, yes.
So you can listen to that.
That was a good one.
In your workplace, because I was not going to swear.
Yeah, I think that's probably the only episode you didn't swear.
That's the only episode of the podcast.
Because it wasn't the bad Santa.
No.
Right.
No. Yeah. This was the Santa.
Yes.
That's the only episode of this podcast my children have ever listened to. So they think that's what I do. They're like, well, you just interview Santa all the time? I'm like, every episode.
That was an amazing one, especially because Santa did such a phenomenal job.
Crushed it
on that episode.
Yep.
And then the other favorite thing I have is literally every single time anybody stops me and says anything nice to me about the podcast. Like I've had people stop me at like festivals and stuff and just say, and there's there are people that I see often in the public eye that are out doing whatever they're doing to make their community better. And they'll stop me and be like, hey, my brother was addicted to blank, or I lost my mom, or I lost it. And they just come at me with some heavy stuff that they've dealt with. And then they say that they found some peace or some benefit, or were able to laugh listening to our podcast.
Yeah.
I don't like that. Feels amazing. Like in that moment, those are the moments that make all of the work that you've done worth it. Absolutely. When you know that somebody out there got something from it like that. You know what I mean? So every time we get a compliment like that, or even if somebody sends us a message or whatever, oh my God.
I mean, I get something from it every single episode that I edit, because I've listened to the whole thing. So like I always get something from it. It always makes me think about something,
That's good. Yeah,
or makes me laugh too. So, and that's a good, it's just a great combination to have.
Yeah.
I liked having. I think my favorite episode was Lonnie's episode.
Very
Lonnie
cool episode.
Yeah, I like that one because it was another visually impaired blind person that, I mean, dude, talk about being unstoppable.
Yeah.
Hikes
the Colorado River and hikes the 7 summits.
Yeah.
And all the
well, he did the Appalachian Trail, right?
No. He did 150 miles of it.
Okay. But still, for a blind man, I mean.
And the 7 summits to, again, the Colorado River to go whitewater rafting down the Colorado River, all that other stuff that he had done. It's like, okay.
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Amazing dude with an incredible story.
Remember, didn't he also... He was talking, I know this is minimal compared to some of the others, but it still blows my mind. I think he was talking about how he like remodeled like some parts of his house or something like that.
Yes.
Did he?
Yeah, he remodeled his house. He did his roof.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like,
that's right.
I'm like, dude, no, okay. Yeah. Like he's one of those people that I look up to in the sense of like, he's one of the reasons why I am not letting vision loss beat me.
Yeah.
I mean, he is probably the main reason.
Oh yeah.
So,
awesome. Yeah. Awesome mentor for sure for anybody.
Absolutely.
Period. But yeah.
I just want to reiterate, it's been it's an honor to be a part of this podcast. And just, be able to take something away from it too. And I really do think that you guys are making a difference in the veteran community and outside of the veteran community as well, because it's helping, I feel like just since getting closer with you, Eric, in the last, 3-4 years, and then even with the podcast too, I feel like I have a better understanding of veterans more than I did before. And it's funny, like every time I'm at a party or something and I'm interacting with a veteran, I feel like there's things I know that I can like use in our conversation to where it's like, I get it, I feel like I can have a realistic conversation, if that makes sense. But I always, seriously, it goes back like, well, and I've learned some lingo, if you will, that you guys always use. So like, I will use some of that. And so then they're like, oh, okay, this guy
gets it.
They're like, this guy knows.
That's why I called the nonprofit Project Headspace and Timing, because when I was in the military, sometimes, so I was infantry, and the end all be all of infantry weapons is the 50 cal machine gun. And to use this big, bad, powerful weapon, you needed this tiny little gauge, 2 pieces of metal connected by a chain called a headspace and timing gauge. And if you did not use that, the weapon might not fire, or the round could explode and kill whoever's trying to use it or seriously hurt them. So the headspace and timing gauge was so important for the functionality of this giant weapon system. And when I was thinking of a name for the nonprofit, I always knew in my mind that that's what I was going to call it, because I wanted to call it, and it's happened since then, and every time it does, it's awesome. I wanted to give it a name where if I said it in a group, if somebody looked at me, like their eyebrows lifted, like, and they kind of perked up a bit because they understand. Like when I would go and talk to Legions, VFWs, like Vietnam vets, and they would hear, oh, headspace and timing, and you would see an old Vietnam or Korean War vet in the back just kind of poke his head up and just go, nice. I'm like, that dude gets it. That's why I called it that. But it was just so applicable because of the dual meaning of the fact that I wanted to create that organization that could help these weapons become functional, or just be functional. So yeah, the terminology that's used in the veteran world is very specific to that world. And when you use it around other vets, select veterans, and they hear that, it starts to open up the trust, because they're like, oh, he knows something about my world. You know what I mean? And that means a lot. And that's not just the veteran community. When I used to work for CertaPro painters, and I tried to teach myself Spanish because some of our painters were Hispanic, when I would speak Spanish to them, they would be so appreciative. They were like, I
bet they would.
Oh, yeah. You're trying to learn more about my culture.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think in the same way, when you do that around a veteran, they're like, oh, cool. This guy, he's trying to learn more about my culture. He's tried to learn something about my culture. And it's going to make them feel like you're more of a safe place, I think.
Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. I could not agree more with that.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to get out there about the I'm Fine podcast, or just anything FAT related or veteran related in Kankakee County, or any other organizations that you want to shout out in the veteran community as well? Because I think that's something that, both of you really, it's not just about FAT, it's about everyone.
There is, I want to do for Dan Gerber. He organizes a Veterans Day run in Mantino.
Dan does a lot. Dan's awesome.
Dan's all over.
Yeah. So if you guys anyone wants to do it or watch, it starts at Heritage Park in Mantino in the parking lot. Meet at 7:15 on Veterans Day.
On Veterans Day. And is this coming out?
Yeah, on Veterans Day.
On Veterans Day. Nice.
So, yeah.
What about the organization for blind veterans that you told me about before? Was there not an organization, or did I just make that up?
Yeah, like who I went skiing. Oh my gosh, what's it called?
Yeah,
Blinded Veterans Association, the BVA. Yes, BVA. It's Blinded Veterans Association. It's basically just all blind veterans. I went skiing with them, and great group of people.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Honestly, there's so many organizations. If you're a veteran in Kankakee County, in my opinion, what you have to do is you need to try to become a member of your local Legion or VFW. Those organizations need veteran support. They need veteran volunteers. So if you ever can make any time, I mean, you don't even have to go to all the meetings, but they need more veteran support. I see a lot of Vietnam veterans, Gulf War vets that are really doing a lot of the work there, but a lot of the OEF, OIF guys, in my opinion, it's getting to be our time to do more in those arenas. Some other organizations, Buddy Check 22. I love Buddy Check 22. They provide free therapy to pretty much anybody in a veteran's life, also the veteran. They work in conjunction with Riverside's Well and Mind program to be able to offer that. So they are phenomenal. You have Adopt a Soldier, Sue Wackerlin. She's out of Piatone. They're always doing phenomenal things, care package runs. They donated a car to the Prince home for a homeless vet once, which was amazing. They're amazing. If you are going out east, Operation Charlie Bravo, they used to be Operation Combat Bike Saver. They have several programs over in Indiana and the Crown Point area that are phenomenal. Let me think here. Who else am I forgetting that we actively work with a lot? There's a lot of organizations. So according to GuideStar.org, last time I checked, there was like 46,000 nonprofits that work with veterans in the United States. There's so many. But I mean, all those organizations that I listed, I think are phenomenal at working with veterans in the way that they do, because they all do it very differently.
And Project Headspace and Timing works with 42,712 of them.
They're okay. So those guys are all right. That's fine.
Yeah.
They're so.
I mean, so also within FAT, I always forget to talk about that.
See, it's like the same thing. I don't talk about being blind because you don't talk about FAT.
I don't know. I just
now
forget.
You get it.
We have 3 peer support groups a week for veterans. We have a Monday night group, a Wednesday night group, and a Friday at noon group. The Monday and Wednesday groups are in Kankakee. The Friday one is at Uplifted Cares Grief Center. All the information on that can be found on our website, projectheadspaceandtiming.org. We also have a monthly spousal support group because the spouses need that additional.
I would imagine they got to put up with.
Yes, 100%, man. They got to deal with a lot too. So we're trying to offer things there. We also are working in conjunction with the YMCA and Fitness Premier to offer some fitness programs for veterans where they can actually go work out for free through Project Headspace and Timing. So we're thankful for those organizations for that. Piggish Financial has supported us and allowed us to be able to offer some of our veterans access to a program called Smart Dollar by Dave Ramsey. So if they're looking at trying to benefit or learn how to become financially free and educated, which in my opinion is something a lot of vets that I've met with and talked with have issues with. People, period.
Yes.
Right? Like financial education is very important. So to be able to offer this fairly expensive program to our veterans is another amazing thing. We have our crisis program, Spartan Shield, where we work with local hospitals and police departments, where if they come across a veteran that identifies as a veteran that's in any sort of crisis, we can provide a veteran that's been trained in mental health and first aid, not to provide any services, but to work alongside law enforcement and first responders.
That's so cool.
To just let them know, like, it's okay. These people are here to help, like, and not case management, but to just figure out what it is they need help with, what we need to connect them to, and then help them. And then on our outreach side, we have both Troops on Trails and Veiled Valor. Troops on Trails is our outdoors group. So they take veterans out hiking, biking, mountain biking, fishing, kayaking. We started up a survivalist program this year with Dave Laddie, one of our veterans who's amazing. And he's been doing survivalist type things for like 30 years. Veiled Valors are all female veteran outreach group. They're amazing. They have an event coming up here, I think this weekend, which will be after this episode gets released. But they do events once a month. They try to do events once a month for female vets. What else?
That's not enough.
No,
I know I'm forgetting things.
What else do we do?
I'm forgetting a bunch of things.
Is that all?
A couple of things too that I wanted to just briefly touch on. So we just started with the assistance of Hines VA. So our Veteran Affairs, our hospital to the north, Hines VA, and Riverside, Rosecrance, IMH, some of the other mental health providers in this area, we started up a veteran suicide prevention coalition. And we had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago. And because I've been telling them for a long time, some of these people for a long time, we have issues here. We have veterans that are reaching out that want to kill themselves. Like, I need help. I am not the clinician, but I can be that force on the ground that gets to that vet when they're in their worst spot, builds the trust, and gets them to you, the clinician. And so all those clinicians are starting to listen now. And so
that's something you've been working on for a really long time.
Yes, such a long time. And I knew that was something I would need to prove, which I understand. You know what I mean? I would need to prove the efficacy to get some of these clinicians involved. And now they're all starting to get involved, which is amazing. And then also on the homeless side. So Brad brought up earlier, the homelessness issue for veterans, which is in Kankakee County as well. There's a lot happening right now. We have been diligently working. I say we as in just myself, Project Headspace and Timing, the Veterans Assistance Commission, and a lot of other organizations to build an infrastructure for homeless veterans to be able to come in and get the things that they need and then become members of their community again. So we have Pastor James Smith, who has worked on an emergent housing in the old homestead, right?
Yep.
Off of, was that 102? No, 45.
No, 45. Schuyler.
Yeah. Schuyler. The old homestead. The basement is dedicated for veteran emergent housing. So that's like our emergent. We have somebody that's homeless right now. And then the Liberty Lodge, which is on Washington, right behind the Gas and Wash, that's going to be opening up soon. That's a permanent supportive housing project for homeless vets. So once we get somebody in, in my mind, Pastor James's place, that's emergency, just so they get a roof over their head for the night. Then we can get them over to the lodge. So then that's permanent support, or we can get them to the Prince Home in Mantino, whatever the case may be. And then we work with organizations like Midwest Shelters for Homeless Vets that can help pay for that veteran to not only live in wherever they're living, but they'll work on rehousing them so they can eventually become a member of their community again. They can get an apartment, get a job. We can hook them up with their VA benefits. We can hook them up with other peer support groups so they can talk to other vets. We're building that infrastructure here for success, for thriving, and not just what I see some places do again, and which, 6 in one and half a dozen in the other. But it's like, they'll build a housing project for homeless vets, and then they'll just be like, okay, here you go. Bye. And they'll leave.
Yes.
You need those supportive services there.
You got to have the structure.
A lot of vets, in my opinion, need some of that support. So
you got to have the guidance to go along with it, not just, here you go, here's a place to live, have fun.
Well, and some people are successful. Some vets, they can take that and they're good and they are disciplined and they're going to be fine.
But I think something you've mentioned many times on the podcast is many veterans struggle with actually taking care of themselves because they've been so used to being taken care of in the military. Like, you need to eat, go to the chow hall. You need to see the doctor, you just
everything's right there.
Everything's right there on your base or wherever you're stationed. Everything's just handed to you.
Your responsibilities are different because it's like in that environment, it's, depending on your situation, it's like you're being prepared for war or whatever. So all the other little things, the little responsibilities that make up your day-to-day life are going to be taken care of. Your gym, it's right here on the base. You need to get your hair cut right here on the base. Wherever you need to go, you don't need to leave right here. You can just get it all done. And your support system is right there too. But like Brad said, then you come home And then you're like, oh, like I have to do all of this. And I don't even know, like the way that I've explained it before. And I know that this reference is getting more and more antiquated every year, but one of my favorite movies is Shawshank Redemption, right? And there's a scene in that movie about these guys that are in a prison for a super long time. And towards the end of the movie, one of the guys who'd been in prison the longest, an older guy named Brooks, he gets out. He tries to get a job at a grocery store. Everything's moving too fast for him. He doesn't get it. He doesn't feel like he belongs in that world because it's not the world that he's used to. And he ends up killing himself. And so it's like, I use that reference sometimes because, when you leave the military and come to the civilian world, it's hard sometimes to know where your place is and how you fit in to what this community is.
Yeah. And I think it's a lot of it has to do with like you're being... At least for me anyway, I separated myself because I was like, you don't get it. I was trying to like, you really don't understand. You know what I mean? So I did that when I first got out. And then I realized it was also like people just like the humor and the jokes that I was, they don't think that's funny, dude.
Yeah.
You can't joke about that suicide and things like that.
Well, that is an issue. But again, when you look at you got in when you were 17. I got in when I was 17. Yeah. So I'm at Fort Benning, Georgia, and I'm doing a drill where I have to fix a bayonet to the end of my rifle and stab this body. And we're yelling things about killing. And we're 17 years old. So when we get out, we're going to have a weird sense of humor, man.
Yep.
Because like the military literally just tried to prepare you for war.
Yeah.
And to do that for a young person means that you're going to have to subject them to things that you should not have to subject a normal person to.
Yeah.
Because you have to get them ready.
Yeah.
And then you get back, and because you have that, what I would call primal type of humor mentality, in a lot of office settings, it's like, oh my gosh, what did you say? But it's like,
you can say that.
Where I was just at, my worry was not getting rid up by Janet and HR. It was getting hit by a 3,000-pound V-bed.
Yeah.
So like, I'm going to say whatever. You know what I mean?
I mean, depending on like how strict Janet is, she might be comparable.
Also true. Yeah. Like you'd mentioned, and I know vets that will wall themselves off from their communities back home because they're like, they don't get it. They don't understand. They're civilians, whatever. And I understand that to a degree without knowing that vet's specific situation, because it's like, you think that way, but you're just making it that much harder for these conversations to happen. Like if you want to help pave the way, not only for yourself, but for the veterans that are going to come after us, we have to like figure out how to have these conversations amicably. Again, with the goal not being that I'm going to push my narrative and be right. It's that I'm going to tell you what it's like to be me. You're going to tell me what it's like to be you. And we're going to have a better understanding of how to live in this community together. Like that's got to be the goal,
Again, just a reminder that all of these resources are available through FAT and all these other organizations, talking about Buddy Check 22.
Yeah.
And the list goes on and on and on. So
your community wants to see you succeed.
Yes. Like
people want to see you succeed, especially if you're a veteran. If you're a veteran and you're coming back home and you're having problems, like your community is there for you. And it's scary. It's so scary, no matter who you are, to be vulnerable enough to try to reach out for help. But especially in my opinion, if you're a veteran that's had that alpha mentality and this selflessness and all this other kind of stuff, it's going to be hard for you to accept that you can be vulnerable sometimes. But what I found through everything that I've done is that like every time I reached out to my community for help, they were like, yep, what do you need? Let's go. Like they were there for me. And that is the feeling that I want other people to also feel.
Experience.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been great. It's been so good to finally have you guys on the podcast and just to catch up a little bit, because even though like I'm producing the podcast for you, we actually don't see, like I haven't seen Brad in person in forever. It's so funny actually seeing him.
Like, I've never seen you.
No.
I think it's been since high school.
Probably. It probably has. But, it's just like, I'm seeing Brad not through a screen, and I'm seeing him in person, and that's nice. I'm sorry that you can't see me, but at least you can hear me in person.
I can.
You know.
Can I also say one of my other favorite things about the podcast?
Yes.
So like when Brad started getting involved, so in the very beginning, and if it's okay for me to say, like I'd mentioned earlier, you were in a rough place. You were just kind of figuring some stuff out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Finding the purpose. And then once you started getting more involved, started being yourself, started feeling comfortable. And like I was listening to the other vets in our organization like rip on you about being blind. And I stopped you one day and I was like, dude, are you okay with this? Because I'm listening to these guys make fun of you. And you're like, oh, it's the best. Are you kidding? Like you were all about it. And just, again, that's building the culture that we wanted to build, which was of understanding and acceptance, and to be able to do that and have that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that I just wanted to also mention that too.
Absolutely. So go check out I'm F.I.N.E. It's available on all podcast platforms. You can watch it on YouTube as well. You guys have a Facebook page too, as well as Project Headspace and Timing, of course. Anything else?
I really appreciate you, man, because in the very beginning, like we started talking about this podcast and you were starting, like you said, we were the first podcast that you started editing outside of.
And I mean, I wasn't really intending on taking, like doing that type of work. I was just like, you know, trying to focus on Kankakee Podcast, and you're like, well, we're trying to do this thing, but it's like, I don't want to do any editing or anything like that.
It took a lot of Gushers and a lot of Lunchables and Capri Suns, but we got them.
Yes, we did.
But we got them.
Well, dude, I love those Gushers. And pizza Lunchables?
Pizza Lunchables are solid.
Oh, yeah.
But we got to figure all this stuff out together, which was really helpful for me. And so like you being the guy that I could ask all these questions to. And I remember because I was getting deep into the whole, which you can easily do on like equipment and this, that, or the other.
There's a billion. That's what I tell people all the time when they ask me.
So easy to do.
When they're saying, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. What do I need? And I'm just like, well, what answer do you want? Because there's like a billion different ways to do a podcast, but not one is necessary. I mean, sure, there are some things that I would be like, no, do not do that. But most of the time it's like, there's a billion different ways, not all of them are, most of them are correct. It just depends on what works for you.
Well, I think one of the most beneficial pieces of advice, or the most beneficial piece of advice you gave me for the podcast was to just start it.
Well, I mean, you were like, getting started is
start this, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, getting started is a help.
Because you can always sit there and say, well, I want it to be perfect before I start. I got to get the perfect this, that, whatever.
I mean, there are
huge with that, man.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm here for. Yeah. I was happy to have a small part in what you're doing with Project Headspace and Timing.
Insanely important part.
I say small. So that is a large part.
Dude, you guys are doing the grunts of the work.
You're like Morgan Freeman and Bruce Almighty.
No.
Yes. No, I'm not.
You're calling me God?
No, not necessarily. You're just like the behind the scenes guy. That's what I was going for. You know what? Yes. You're very godlike. How about that?
Jake is God. Jake heard it here first.
Jake's God.
God. No way.
It was, but it's just to be able to start that podcast with you. We wouldn't have been able to do it without you, man. Mm-hmm. So I can't thank you enough for that and for everything else you do for us, man.
It's been an honor to be able to do it. And I hope someone is able to listen to at least one episode and take away something from it. I promise that you will. You will be able to take at least one thing away from one episode and be like, wow, that really like opened up a brand new passage in my brain.
I hope so.
Thank you.
So
it's so cool.
Yeah, man, that's awesome.
Brad and Eric, thank you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you, my friend.
That concludes this episode of Kankakee Podcast. I'm Jake LaMore. Thank you so much for listening. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Kankakee Podcast. Shout out to Stephanie Vanderweide for supporting the show each month through Patreon. If you want your name announced on a future episode, you can sign up at patreon.com/Kankakee Podcast. Special thanks to our sponsors, Chicago Dough Company, Noble Dairy Queen Stores, Frank's Appliance Center and Sleep Source, Pigosh Engineering, King Music, Little Me Studio, Taco John's, D. Westfall Jewelers, and Edward Jones Financial Advisor Adam Elroy. Kankakee Podcast is produced by the F.I.N.E team at Pathfinder, a full-service marketing agency in downtown Kankakee. Learn more at yourpathfinder.io. Our theme song is by Lupe Carroll.